Now, for those of you who know what Domestic Girlfriend is and you read the title, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? How could you possibly like this series? And I'm here to explain to you why. There is one big reason why, and some other smaller reasons, but the big reason is the characters. The characters in this series are all amazing. Every single one of them is amazing, and there are so many characters, and yet somehow I ended up liking every single one of the characters, which is crazy. How can I go through and there's like only one or two characters that I can say that I hate, and those characters were designed to make you hate them, so it still works. I honestly don't know how this manga did it, because the cast is huge. There's like 30 characters or something, but either way, the art and paneling in this manga is also phenomenal. Whenever there's an action scene, the paneling reflects that, and honestly, the manga is genuinely good for more reasons than it being spicy, because it is no more so than any other manga of similar genre. But there is something that sets it apart from the others, and that is what I mentioned earlier, the characters. Domestic Girlfriend is a manga that I can genuinely say I recommend because of how fun of a story it was to read, and I actually invested in it since chapter 1, which is crazy. But another thing is that I want to talk about is the anime. The anime for Domestic Girlfriend isn't good. Not only does it cover the worst part of the story, but it also just has bad animation, and honestly, the only thing I liked about the anime was its OP, because that was a banger. So if you wanted to experience the story, I would recommend you just read the manga, because it'll be much better for the long run, I promise, okay? So that's it for the non-spoiler section of this video. I would recommend you to read the manga, as it is really fun and interesting ride all the way through, which is what made it so good to me. Alright, now I think it's time to talk about the big elephant in the room, the thing that everyone associates with Domestic Girlfriend, that being the incest. Do I support it? No, I don't. However, do I understand it? That question is a yes. I do actually, especially with the relationship between Hina and Natsuo, more so than Rui and Natsuo. As with Hina and Natsuo, they were already in love before they became siblings, and feelings aren't something that are so easy to change, so I understand it on that level. Now, on the level of her being a teacher, now that's all on her. There really is no justifying that. She was an adult there and she should have known better, but when it comes to the relationship as siblings, I feel like that's realistic, because I feel like that could happen to you. You can meet and fall in love with someone only for then your parents to get married, and now you have to try and suppress your feelings because you're siblings. Like, that's some really hard stuff to do, so I can completely understand even if I don't support it, but at least this is only a manga, so it wasn't real. Alright, so I've talked about the characters in depth already, but I just want to reiterate that the characters in this series are amazing. Honestly, that was one of the last things I expected from this series because of how bad the anime was. When I watched it years ago, the characters all grow and develop throughout the series. Even some of the characters that play a more minor role do, and that is awesome. I honestly don't know how the mangaka got me to fall in love with the characters in the story, considering the content of it, but that's what makes it awesome. Natsuo, the main character of the story, is probably the last character in the story I thought I would like. The only thing I liked about him before was that we had the same birthday, but his character really surprised me. He became so mature by the end of the series. It's honestly almost wrong to compare early Natsuo to the end of story Natsuo, because they're almost like two separate people. He went through a lot of hardship throughout the series in his time trying to achieve his dream, and all of those events changed him, and he matured into who we see at the end of the story. The last major event that happens to him directly is when his mentor Togen dies. That hit Natsuo hard, but before his mentor's death, he wasn't able to write. He had serious writer's block, but after his death, Natsuo was determined to finish Togen's last piece, and that is not something I feel early Natsuo would do. Not because he was a bad person, but more so because he would have been too afraid and kept doubting his abilities. But this more mature, grown Natsuo did it because he loved his mentor and wanted his last story to be told no matter what. And that is what I love about Natsuo's character. He changed so drastically throughout the series, and that is awesome. Rui is honestly my favorite of the three main characters, and I don't really know why. I just love her personality and her development throughout the series as well. Her and Natsuo are kinda tied together as they were dating throughout most of the series, but what I love about Rui is her strength. Not her physical strength, but her mental strength. Like, when she asked to break up with Natsuo, she clearly still loved him, but it was something she did because she recognized that their relationship was toxic. They were constantly jealous of each other when they hung out with a friend of the opposite sex, and so because of that, Rui called it off to try and better herself, and to me, that just shows her strength as a person. Plus, the fact that Rui, despite all the hiccups she had to go through, she never gave up on following her dream of being a chef. She had to deal with a lot of blatant racism when she was studying in America, and for a born and raised Japanese person, that was something foreign to her, and when she goes through all of that, you can see just how much of a toll it takes on her, but the one thing that never stopped was her determination to keep going. The only thing that was put into question was when she lost her sense of taste, but even then, she still kept on pushing forward with a little encouragement from Natsuo and the other people around her. Rui, to me, is a strong character, and someone who strives for her goals with everything she has, never giving up until it is already too late, and that is something I find admirable and what I love about her character so much. Hina, third and final of the main characters, is an interesting character, as she develops probably the least throughout the series. Like, most of her development is stuff that happens early on in the story, and then she kinda stagnates, but that's honestly fine because the role she plays in the story, she doesn't really need much development. But one of the things I love about her character, and this is going to sound bad, but it's how much more she suffers throughout the series in comparison to Rui and Natsuo. She had to give up her dream job, give up her love, and almost gave up her life twice, and was also being stalked and harassed, and honestly, it's kind of insane just how much more she went through than the other two, and she did all of that while trying to keep everything bottled up, only adding more to the stress that she felt. And honestly, it's cool because with each new incident that happened to her, we see her grow and change, even if it's only subtle. That change is still there. Her character was always meant to be the guiding figure for both Rui and Natsuo when they were going through their struggles, but never let them help when she needs it. But closer to the end of the story, she does finally start to rely on people, just like how she helps her siblings, and I love that. The art in this manga is really good, and honestly, the anime did not do the manga justice. The manga looks really good, the character designs are solid, the backgrounds look good, and overall, I would say that it is a very pretty manga. And the paneling is also pretty good. The mangaka knows how to play with the paneling quite well, which honestly just adds to the experience of the manga, and that just makes that much more fun of the story. Domestic Girlfriend was a manga that I didn't expect to like, especially after I had experienced the monstrosity that is the anime, but the manga caught me off guard with how good it is. I fell in love with the characters of the story and making me feel for these characters, and the events throughout the story were great, some of which were very realistic and some obviously exaggerated a bit, but overall my experience with Domestic Girlfriend has been a good one, and its manga definitely caught me off guard with how much I genuinely enjoyed reading it, and it is a manga that I definitely recommend if you haven't read it and are into romance dramas, because it is definitely a fun ride.